We're lucky to have with us here today two of Israel's distinguished generals, former chiefs of staff, Dan Haloutz and Moshe Alon, who also served as Israel's defense minister. Dan Haloutz, the former commander of Israel's Air Force, and Moshe Alon, please join me in welcoming two of Israel's former Ramatkalim, Moshe Alon and Dan Haloutz. Thank you both for being here. I'd like to jump straight into, which was one of the big issues on the table, is Israeli-American ties. We have a visit upcoming by President Trump to Israel. And I'm curious to get both of your takes on what should we be expecting. What are the chances of relaunching a peace process? What are the chances of success when it comes to that potential peace process, considering the two leaders on both sides, Netanyahu and Mahmoud Abbas? So, General Alon, why don't we start with you?
Shalom. Thank you, Jacob, for the invitation for this important gathering of the Jerusalem Post. I believe that we are now in a new era regarding the relationship between the State of Israel and the United States. Between the defense establishment, anyhow, a superb relationship. But regarding the political leadership, it's no doubt that in the last 8 years we faced difficulties, disputes. And I believe that there is a chance for a change. This is my feeling regarding the new administration. Better understanding between Jerusalem and Washington when it comes to the issues of Iran, what should be done regarding the greatest crisis in the Middle East since the days of Muhammad, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, everywhere, and what to do with the radical Islamist movement, which is the main challenge in the region. When it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I hear about potential deal. I believe that's my feeling that, first of all, is on behalf of President Trump to demonstrate goodwill, which is fine. I hope with very low expectations regarding final settlement and so forth, as we are very experienced. Since the dawn of Zionism, we haven't witnessed yet an Arab-Palestinian partner who was ready to conclude any kind of agreement based on territorial compromise. I hope that after being frustrated from those expectations, Israel is not going to be blamed. As in the past, especially regarding the last administration, Abu Mazen closed the door in the face of President Obama. He was not blamed for it, and in a way, Israel was held responsible. I hope that with the Trump administration, he has to try to bring in regional parties. I don't believe that he is going to succeed. There is a lot to be done together without concluding the conflict based on Israeli interests, to my mind, in one hand, to understand that there is no chance for final settlement. On the other hand, we don't want to rule them. In between, in this framework, there is a lot to be done. I believe in ground-up, steps-by-step activities, making progress for the benefits of the two sides. Hopefully, Trump will be helpful in this regard without illusions. And of course, not blaming Israel, but keeping Abu Mazen accountable for the coming failure.
But I just want to press you before we go to General Haloutz. You were, until last May, the defense minister under Benjamin Netanyahu. You left the government and you, I'm paraphrasing here, but you basically said more or less that you've lost faith in Prime Minister Netanyahu's leadership. Do you think that he's sincere about reaching a peace deal with the Palestinians?
You know, the idea of dividing the land of Israel, it's not new. Going back to Peel Commission proposal of 37, which was accepted by the Jewish leadership, although it was not in our favor, it was rejected by the Arabs. In 47, it was a partition plan proposal by the United Nations resolution. Again, the Jewish leadership said yes, the Arab leadership said no. Later on, of course, Camp David of Barak, Clinton proposal of December 2000, Arafat rejected all kinds of proposals, and Abu Mazen rejected to Olmert proposal after Annapolis 2008, and in 2014, he rejected to continue the negotiation based on American paper, terms of reference. So there is no chance for them. Occupation didn't start in 67, in 48, meaning it's about our very existence of the State of Israel. So there is no chance to conclude the conflict. There is a lot to be done in order to allow them what they enjoy already, political independence. Of course, they are dependent on our economy, on our infrastructure, on our security. Abu Mazen is not able to survive without our freedom of operation in all the cities in Judea and Samaria. So we should be realistic with this kind of expectations, hopefully to make progress from the ground up, to make progress, but without illusions.
So General Haloutz, back in 2005, the summer of 2005, you were the chief of staff and oversaw the withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. And we see today what's happening in Gaza, the cycles of violence and conflict that we've had there, most recently the large-scale protective edge in the summer of 2014. Do you think that unfortunately, I guess, lack of a better word, we're doomed to these continued cycles with Hamas? Or is there some other option that we just haven't tried yet?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and congratulations on your anniversary. With your permission, I would like to address first the first question. I believe that the word peace is frightening, and we're using peace, and everyone has his terminology, how to define peace. I don't want to use the word peace. I believe that we should look for a kind of arrangement, long-term agreement, because right now, I don't see any potential for peace as the optimists are looking at the word peace. On the other hand, as close as President Trump is to Israel and as determined he is, it would be more difficult to oppose any kind of solution that he will bring with. Because you can not deny friendly suggestion that will be put on the table. That's first. And just to remind that US and Japan are in good relation after a very, very cruel World War II. The same with Germany, the Americans who are the ones who recovered Germany from the disaster of World War II. So peace or agreement is signed between hostile sides, not between those who are respecting each other. And we don't have to look at the other side as someone who has nothing to do with us. If that's our approach, we'll never reach any kind of agreement. Although peace, as defined by majority of the people, will not be in our region for the foreseen future. Peace, agreement can be achieved. Now, regarding Gaza, you know, the withdrawal from Gaza Strip was a political decision. It's not a military decision. And I'm not addressing the political decision because it was decided by the Prime Minister and supported by majority of the Knesset. The question if it was a good or not, a good step or not, it's an historical question, and it will be judged long-term. And long-term is not yet arrived. I believe, and we know, that rockets were launched from Gaza before the disengagement, before the disengagement. We should remember that. General Yalon was the commander-in-chief those days, and we remember what happened then before the disengagement. What was the reason for the political decision? It's not my job to judge. There were reasons, and I want to believe that those reasons were coming from a very good thinking about the future of the State of Israel. So I believe about the Prime Minister who took this decision, and I don't think that this kind of question should be addressed to the military establishment. It should be addressed to the political establishment.
We're on the verge of commemorating 50 years to the 1967 war, to the war that Israel conquered the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, the Sinai, and reunified Jerusalem. And sometimes it seems that Israel has yet to fully decide what it wants to do with some of these territories, right? The Golan, Israel has applied Israeli law. East Jerusalem, Israel has annexed. But the West Bank, you have people, some of the people here today who call to annex Area C, other members of the Israeli government who say that's not the right move. What should we be doing now at this 50th anniversary? And I'll even add to the question, your counterparts in the Shabak, in the Shin Bet Israel Security Agency, I'm sure you're all familiar with the film Shomrei Asaf, the gatekeepers. One after the other came out and said Israel needs to get out of the West Bank. And I'm curious to hear what the two of you, as heads of the IDF, where you believe we need to be. Where should we be going now 50 years later? So General Haloutz, we'll start with you.
I'm saying a very simple thing. The Israeli government should decide. Time is running, and time is playing in favor of this, who is using time in order to take decision and act accordingly. We need a vision that will unify all of us, a vision that will explain to the young generation why we are sending them to fight, on what they are going to fight, for what they are going to sacrifice themselves, for this settlement, another settlement, for this Arab village, another Arab village. As long as we are not taking a decision, the time is not playing in our favor. And I think that those who are delaying taking the decisions regarding the vision of Israel, the State of Israel, are making a big mistake, because we are pushing it to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And we should take decision in order to leave after us more solid situation. And the situation now is not solid, it's not stable. In my view, the frame of any future solution is already described, is already written. And the major question, what we want to be. If we want to be a democratic Jewish state, we have to get rid from 2 or maybe 4, if we're taking Gaza into consideration, Palestinians, so-called, Arabs, that's the right terminology, out of our country, out of country. And I believe that it will happen this way or another. We have to remember, Trump was elected for maximum 2 terms. We are going to survive more than 2 terms, and we have to look the day after.
General Yalon.
There are too many misconceptions when we discuss the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. First of all, this is not the call for instability in the Middle East. When we talk about security, starting to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the wrong way to deal with the security situation in the Middle East. What's going on now in the Middle East, in this chaotic situation, in this crisis, it's not because of Israel. There is no any connection between what's going on in the sectarian violence in Iraq or in Syria, the tribal conflict in Libya or in Yemen, and Israel whatsoever. That's one misconception that we should avoid. because we heard too many times, to include from Washington until recently, this is the call for instability. I strongly deny it. Then we have the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is unique. For those who use slogans, separation, we are here, they are there, can any Palestinian entity survive without Israel, economic-wise, infrastructure-wise, security-wise? No way. And the idea that concessions regarding land will bring about peace, we are so experienced from land for terror with more than 1,000 casualties, land for thousands of rockets. So we should be more realistic regarding what can be achieved. And as I said, in one hand, I don't see any chance for final settlement. On the other hand, I don't want to rule them. We have to make our own decisions, meaning making progress on the economy, infrastructure, security, but not ignoring the fact, which for myself was awakening in '95, serving as head of the intelligence under late Mr. Rabin. August '95, at the peak of Oslo, in one of my working meetings with late Mr. Rabin as the Prime Minister and Defense Minister, I said, Mr. Prime Minister, I have to warn you, strategic early warning. I don't see any sign for reconciliation on the Palestinian side. Arafat doesn't educate his people for coexistence with us. In contrary, he educates them for jihad, holy war, and istishhad, to become shaheeds, martyrs. And unfortunately, this is the case still now. For how long? You know, we have this conflict for a century and a half. I do believe in what we call the iron wall concept, until all our neighbors will realize that Israel is in the Middle East, in the land of Israel, forever. I feel like we are going the right way. There is no conventional type threat to the state of Israel anymore. Those who try to acquire military nuclear capabilities, so far, they don't have it. It's going to be a challenge with Iran within a decade. We have to deal with it. But at the end, President Sadat of Egypt realized that in order to get territory like Sinai, he had to sign peace accord with us. King Hussein of Jordan enjoys strategic relations with us without getting any piece of land since 1970. Today we enjoy a kind of common interest with the Sunni Arab regimes in the region. The term the Israeli-Arab conflict is irrelevant for meanwhile. With the Palestinians, we should convince them that we are not going to disappear. We are going to stay in the land of Israel. We are going to be there forever, and we can live together without uprooting a single Arab and a single Jew.
General Haloutz, I want to shift gears with you for a moment, move to Israel's northern front, Lebanon. You were the chief of staff during the 2006 Second Lebanon War, during which Hezbollah then had about 15,000, let's say 20,000 rockets. They fired about 4,300 during those 34 days of war. But now, while we've had almost 11 years of quiet along Israel's border with Lebanon, we are told that Hezbollah has over 130,000 rockets and missiles with ranges and accuracy and warheads the size that can cause unprecedented devastation and destruction. When you think back 11 years ago, and you look at that war, do you have any decisions that you say, maybe I should have done differently? And also, how would you potentially deal with Hezbollah in a future war?
I think that 11 years of quiet border is the first proof that this campaign was in a way successful, although there were a lot of mistakes, etc. The fact that they had those days 40,000, by day lunch only 3,900, reflect what will happen next time, if next time will come. We never went into a war because the other side is equipping himself with new and modern equipment, although we're trying to prevent it time to time by some Air Force activities over there. I would say that when we are judging the other side strengthening, we are not looking at ourselves. We multiply and multiply and multiply our abilities. And I believe that next time the Israeli government will take the recommendation of the Chief of Staff to destroy Lebanon if they will do something. In my
Destroy
case,
Lebanon, what does that mean to
in
destroy
my
Lebanon?
case, that was the recommendation, and it wasn't approved because of justified reasons. International relation, American pressure over us, etc. But no doubt that we should use our iron fist whenever someone is raising his hand on an Israeli citizen. And this iron fist means that any country with its launching terror activity against Israel should be punished a lot beyond their expectation, a lot beyond.
General Yalon, when you were defense minister, you were one of the architects, I think we could say, of the red lines that Israel laid down for what's happening in Syria, the transfer of weapons from Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel will take action. And while Israel doesn't usually say it did something or didn't do something, there's been about 20, 25 alleged strikes over the last couple of years. So when you think about what's happening in Lebanon and a future war, is all of Lebanon a target? Is state infrastructure now a target? Is Lebanon and Hezbollah one and the same?
Situation with Hezbollah, of course, with Iran. Hezbollah, it is an Iranian proxy. It's another evidence that the problem is not what is called occupation since '67. We don't occupy any Iranian land whatsoever. We don't occupy any Lebanese land whatsoever. But they still call to wipe Israel off the map of theirs. It's about our very existence. This is the kind of threat that we have to deal with. But so far, Hezbollah is deterred. All the parties in Syria are deterred. Hamas in the Gaza Strip is deterred. Israel enjoys an effective, sustainable deterrence because of its military power. Yes, the IDF is the strongest military power in the Middle East. Now, when it comes to the internal conflict in Syria as an example, we made some smart decisions. First of all, not to intervene. We don't say whether we are for Assad or against Assad, although we have our own opinion. We talk about our interests, illustrated by red lines. The first one, we said, we are not going to tolerate any violation of our sovereignty. If it happens, we use a big stick of the IDF. And when it happened intentionally by Iranian proxies from Syria, 12 times. The last time was in August 2015. All those proxies are not alive anymore. That means deterrence. And as we have ISIS on our border, in the southern part of the Golan Heights, they were asked more than a year ago by German correspondent, you are there. You don't deal with Israel? They said, we don't want to be engaged with the IDF. The deterrence. And of course, another red line is not to allow delivery of advanced weapons to our enemies in the region. And when it happens, another use of the big stick. And for meanwhile, we didn't and we don't ignore the humanitarian crisis across the border. And when we witness the tragedy across the border, women, kids, adults, looking for food, for fuel or blankets in the winter, and medical treatment, we extend our hand. And we welcome them. Till now, more than 3,000 Syrians, kids, women, adults, and injured rebels were hospitalized in Israeli hospitals. After recovery, we bring them back home. This is a Jewish-Israeli way not to ignore this tragedy. but not to intervene and not to be involved. But if Trump is coming with a new strategy, we have any ideas about what should be done regionally.
So just quickly, who would you want to see in Syria? Who would you want to see in control of that country? What is in our interest?
What?
Who would you want to see in control of Syria? What is in Israel's interest ultimately? If you could give a quick answer. Just give a name. No?
No, I'm not going to give any name. As I said, we don't want to be involved and intervene. But we would like to see Iranians on the other side of the border. And without addressing the grievances of the Sunnis, which is a vast majority in Syria, there is no way to stabilize the situation. With the support of Russia, with the support of Iran, there is no way to stabilize the situation. But anyhow, I believe that what we are suffering now is from the vacuum created by the US administration, former administration decision to disengage from the area. And the vacuum has been filled by the three radical Islamist movements. The Iranian Shia ideology led by Iran, and unfortunately they've exploited the bad deal to gain hegemony in Iraq, in Damascus, in Beirut, in Sana'a. Hopefully it will turn now with a new administration policy. Of course, Daesh and ISIS and Al-Qaeda as a Sunni caliphate ideologies, and Muslim Brotherhood as well, led today by a member of NATO, Erdogan. A grand strategy should restrain those elements, of course, defeating ISIS, putting the Iranian regime under pressure, and restraining Erdogan not to go on with the rogue activities, whether by facilitating ISIS, by Islamizing Europe. There is a lot to be done in order to fill the vacuum for the benefit, first of all, of the West, the United States, Europe, as well as Israel.
I would like to address this question as well. I believe that, first of all, in my view, Israel geopolitical and military situation in the Middle East is the best ever, because there is no enemy that you can define right now beside the terror groups. No country is an enemy to Israel beside Iran, and we can speak about Iran. In Syria, unlike the common saying, I would say that for the time being, Assad is the right solution for us. And I'm not running for politics, so I can speak freely. Why?
For now.
Because for now, I'm saying for now. First of all, let him finish the work against all those terror groups that are fighting them, and then discuss about Assad, what will be his future. And I see the Russian as a stabilizing factor in the region. I see that the presence of Russia in Syria, I know that the tension that it can create vis-à-vis Israel, but for the time being, it's a stabilizing factor. And we'll see. The future will say its words very soon.
So in the last just 2-3 minutes that we have left, I want to switch to Iran, which is a topic that, of course, is of extreme importance. But with the deal that has kind of kicked the can down the road for the next 7-8 years, and assuming Iran abides by it, but there could come a time in another 7, 8, 9 years when Israel will once again have to contemplate and consider military action against Iran. You're a former head of the Air Force. Now we have the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter, the stealth fighter jet. 5 of them are now in Israel. When that time comes, are you confident that Israel has the capability to take out Iran's nuclear facilities if needed?
The question is not technical capabilities. The question is a lot beyond technical capabilities. It's a political strategy, what we want to achieve. That's first. Second, I heard some ministers that spoke this morning, not about their ministries, but about Iran and all the other issues. I don't see Iran right now as an existential threat to Israel. Now, when Iran will have nuclear capability, then we'll discuss. North Korea is not an issue for Israel. So we shouldn't jump on the hill and say, hey, look, we are here, why we are forgetting us, North Korea? Let them forget us. I believe that when time will come, Iran should be addressed by international community and not by Israel only. I believe that the current administration is supporting the Israeli standpoint that we shouldn't allow Iran to get to the point that it will have an existential threat over Israel. And I believe that the coming 4, maybe 8 years will give us opportunity to share our knowledge, our know-how, and our concerns with the American administration, and to come together to an understanding what should be done if. I don't think that we should discuss now how we'll operate in 8 years. Who knows? In 8 years, the globe can disappear. So why to discuss 8 years now? Let's speak about tomorrow, about Iran. And tomorrow, we should be very strict about Iranian implementation of the average or below average agreement that was achieved with them. But as long as there is agreement, the average agreement is a lot better than a very successful war.
General Yalon, one quick final statement.
No doubt that the main threat for stability in the Middle East, not just for the state of Israel, is coming from Tehran, with this rogue regime, with its aspirations and capabilities. ISIS has the aspirations as well to run the world by Islamic Caliphate. They don't have the capabilities. But Iran is a regional superpower, very dangerous. Now, in order to deal with Iran, you don't have to look to the JCPOA, namely the deal regarding the nuclear issue. This regime is violating UN Security Council resolutions on a daily basis regarding proliferation of arms and terror, regarding missile tests, and of course, human rights issue. There are at least 3 reasons to put again this regime under pressure and under sanctions in order not to meet an Iranian nuclear bomb within a decade. This should have been the main challenge here in Washington, Jerusalem, European capitals, to deal with it now. For Israel, you know, yes, we have the strong military in the region. We have the best defensive measures like Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow 2, in a short time, Arrow 3. The best defense anyhow is a good offense, whether it is in fighting terror. When we moved from the defense to the offense in Defensive Shield Operation 2002, that was a turning point in confronting the Palestinian terror. That was the case in Lebanon with the charge of the Hezbollah with heavy price by our especially airstrikes. It was the case in summer 2014, and you can see that Hamas since then hasn't shot a single bullet to our territory since then. Anyhow, the IDF is ready for any conflict generating from the north, from the south, from Iran. Israel should be able to defend itself by itself, and we are ready to make it.
Thank you very much, Generals Yalon and Haloutz, and to just say to 2 men who have dedicated their lives to protecting and defending the state of Israel, Toda Rabah, thank you very much.